What's up, guys? It's your boy Professor Django coming at you with another our Friday update video. Here to tell you everything
Hey,
we've been doing in
Django,
the
Django,
wait, I hear something.
Django,
Jess, is that
Django.
you?
Yeah, that's me. Hey, did
Oh,
you?
there you are.
We're live right now, Django.
Live, but
Yeah.
I was doing a Friday.
We're, I mean, yeah, but I know we usually do a Friday on Fridays
I
instead
mean,
of streams,
but I was gonna tell people that in the world of Star Wars this week, I've been reading Black Spire by Delilah Dawson.
well, that's funny because I did too.
Oh, you did? You read it too?
Yeah, I finished it actually.
Oh, so did I. Would you rather just talk about that today instead of doing a Friday?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. Let's just do our spoiler discussion stream on Black Spire
I mean,
for the first time.
we might as well. Yeah.
Yeah, since in this completely impromptu moment.
Yep. Yep. Completely impromptu.
Impromptu and never done before. Hey guys, welcome. We got a couple people in the chat. We had Stuart and Skynobi are here, but have not read the book, so they're gonna say hi and skedaddle. We have Regina and Neil and John and Bear. Oh my gosh, so many great people here. Thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, we will tell you. Lobot will remind you of this as we go through it. But if you have not read Black Spire by Delilah Dawson today, that's what we're discussing today in a spoiler stream. Consider yourself warned.
Yep. So that's.
We will have a spoiler-free review of this at some point on the.
Yes, I meant to do it before the stream, and I was under the weather all week, so that did not happen.
I would have done it before the stream, but I finished the book 20 minutes.
Usually I'm the one finishing the book 20 minutes before the stream, so it was a nice role reversal for once.
We were talking earlier that when the last NJO stream we did, I'd finished both of those books like a month and a half before we talked about them, and now I'm finishing, less than half an hour to talk about it.
It's just how it goes sometimes. Time is an illusion.
Getting my very fresh, yeah, there you go, my very fresh thought.
Hey Sarge, welcome. All right, but with that, like I said, spoilers ahead. But Django, what are some general thoughts you have about the book?
So first off, again, I really enjoyed it. Delilah Dawson is one of my favorite new canon authors. And it's hard for me to overestimate how good she is. But again, when we talked about this last week, when we talked about A Crash of Fate, I really love everything that we're getting. I've not read the comics, Galaxy's Edge comics yet. But everything that I have read, I love Batuu. I love feeling like I'm there. I love feeling like I know these characters and have like a spatial awareness of like Black Spire Outpost as a place.
Yep.
I loved Vi and Archex, especially Archex. Characters that we know from Phasma by Dawson.
Yep.
So overall, I really liked it. It's a good story of how the Resistance base comes to be in Black Spire Outpost. Where the new ride is going to be at Galaxy's Edge in Anaheim and Orlando. So I mean, if nothing else, if you just want an explanation for how that comes to exist, this will be that for you. But it's also a really good story, and it's a compelling story about like teamwork and personal sacrifice, like what it means to be in the Resistance, especially after Hosnian.
Yeah.
That's not something we've gotten a big glimpse of yet prior to that.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. I had high hopes for this book. Phasma was or is one of my favorite of the new canon novels. I think like it's really hard for me to rank the books because they're all so different in their own way, but it's like Phasma, Bloodline, and Master and Apprentice in my top 3. So having Delilah come back to write another novel was so great. She's been doing some Star Wars adventure comics and stuff, so she's been around. But I was so stoked for this, and what I loved about the characters is she is so good at putting in like the little human moments when she writes characters, like even Kath, the kind of antagonist of the story. Like when we meet him in this book, we in Phasma, but when we meet him in this book, just the description of how he's exercising and like the little quirks he has. It's you know, it's kind of a weird thing to say because the book does have such a strong big picture, but it's the little lines uh, throughout the book that were the parts that I responded to the most, or how some small little thing like in one sentence could completely explain the character to you, and that's one of the things I like about her writing so much.
I also think too, one of the things I liked about this book, and I agree with everything you say about the character moment, especially like
Mhm.
the interpersonal stuff, like between
Yeah,
Vi and Archex. I think it
yeah.
really works. Um, but or even Vi, and was it Yelena? Is that how you would pronounce that? You think the
I
person that
mean,
works
that's
for
how I'd
Savi?
pronounce it, but I pronounce everything wrong.
Huh,
So
yeah,
take that for what you will.
we'll talk about how to say Crate Dragon later on. Um, but um, it's interesting to me too because this book is like a lot of different types of stories all rolled up. So like
Mhm.
there's a spy story, there's like a recruitment story, there's like a let's desperately set up a new base story. There's a
Mhm.
redemption stories, there's an Indiana Jones, let's go rob a temple and fight off booby trap story. Like
Yeah. There's
like
so much.
and it flows in a way that makes sense, but it gives you a
Mhm.
lot of different glimpses into a lot of different things, and you really get a sense of who Vi Moradi. I can't speak to
It's fine.
but who she is like as a person, what the resistance.
Yeah. Well, and it captured emotion so well too, because on the one hand, you have everything that's going on in Batuu, and this book and A Crash of Fate, which we talked about in our last streamcast, um, do so along with the Flight of the Falcon books. Do a lot to kind of create this idea of Batuu and really bring it into the space. But there were little things throughout the book too that tied it into the bigger picture. Like every time I read the line "Supreme Leader Kylo Ren," I got a little bit excited. I was like, he is the supreme leader. Or like there was the part where Luke was referred to in the past tense, and I feel like the scene where somebody's asking Vi and she's like, "Oh, she or Luke Skywalker was her brother." Like the use of "was." I swear that hit me harder than Luke's actual death in The Last Jedi. Like when I realized, oh, now he's going to be in the past tense. Like it was a brick wall.
I had the
Um,
same kind of moment when talking to about lightsaber crystals,
yeah,
and Elena was like, "Yeah, these are what these kyber crystals are what the Jedi use in their lightsabers." And I was like, "You mean the one that is existing? Like it's just Ray, like that's it."
like what do you mean the Jedi? I don't often like to quote things directly in videos because I like to promote people to read things for themselves. But as long as we're talking about spoilers, the one passage I liked the most was like at the top of chapter 3, so it's not that far in. Um, but it just describes like after the Hosnian cataclysm, the resistance was thrown into utter chaos, and after the Battle of Crate, it was nearly destroyed. Their ships and officers were gone. Leia almost died, and Luke Skywalker saved what was left of the crew, only to pass into the Force himself, leaving the Jakku scavenger Rey as their only hope. With nothing left of their fleet but the Millennium Falcon and no allies rallying to their call, Leia contacted her spies and gave them new orders. That paragraph gave me chills when I read it for the first time.
I mean,
Uh,
because like we kind of know how the galaxy is shaping up in Last Jedi, but this is like the first real way that stuff that I've read where we get a
mhm.
glimpse of just what that bleak. Like
Yeah,
I spend so much of the book trying to get some type of long range comm system out to Leia, and when
yeah,
she contacts Leia, Leia's like, "We have nothing to send you. Like you are on your own. Like in a serious way, we have no help that we like.
nothing.
I believe in you, and I think you can do it, and we're gonna, you know, believe that the Force will be with you. But that's all we got."
Yeah,
Um,
and it. This book was, I think, the first time I've really, because I know like some of the Poe comics, and there's been a few things that have really gone post um, Last Jedi, but this was the first time that I'm not up to date with a lot of the comics, so this was, me sitting down really getting past episode 8 for the first time. And even though it's its own contained story, and even though it's very much about Batuu, there would be these moments where I would go, "Oh crap, that's right. This is what is going on. Oh man." And those little reminders were so much for me.
I mean, even just that, like, I wasn't sure. I'm assuming you like the Chadrafan character is Cricky, although
Yeah.
Crikey, like to play off the Australian,
Crikey.
like that would be funny too.
Croc
But
Hunter.
he was talking about how like she had like family on
Yeah.
Osmian, and like we've like Alderaan is so big in our minds because we've had so much time to think about how Alderaan.
Mhm.
But we haven't really had, even though it's been like real time for us and real time for them
Mhm.
too, we haven't really had like big, how has Hosnian affected everyone else yet. And I
Right.
imagine we're going to get some of that out of Resistance too, because
Yeah, because
that's
of
Kaz is
Kaz.
from. Um, but even those types of world building things that, like, the Supreme Leader not being Snoke anymore,
Right.
and like, like,
Oh,
like what that means, or the fact that like Phasma's not around anymore, as far as we are led to
as
believe.
far as
Um,
we are told.
um, I,
I
I'll,
didn't see a dead body.
I'll, I will believe that Phasma is dead when I
When I see her Force Ghost.
yeah. But when
You
Delilah
try.
Dawson tells me she's dead, um, up and until that point, um,
Exactly.
but like even details like that one character not being there, like it really lets you know that where we are now is a real like post Last Jedi world
Mhm.
change dynamic.
Right. Um, and Dale's got some pronunciation there. Sorry, I was getting distracted by chat. But no, and I think that um, I mean, obviously, one of the big things within the novel itself is the idea of how the galaxy is changing with the First Order. Because I think something that a lot of people forget, and this isn't necessarily their fault, just because there's so little sequel trilogy media out there, is, you know, right or wrong, Force Awakens got kind of it got a lot of criticism for being a clone of A New Hope. And the trouble with that is it gives the impression that the Resistance and the First Order have been at odds with each other before the movie, in the same way that there was already a war before A New Hope, which is not really true. The First Order was there, but it was more of a Cold War between the First Order and the New Republic. And so the galaxy really went to war with the Hosnian Cataclysm. The First Order was just kind of this shadowy figure out in who cares land, and Hosnian was really the attack that made it a big deal. And with Batuu, we see this idea of the First Order is going to come and change life for your planet as you know it, even if they show up because your spy was talking very loudly in a bar.
Right. Well, and I think too, I think you really get a sense like what that world is like, not
Mm-hmm.
just for Batu, a lot of different, like the First Order goes in a short span of time
Mm-hmm.
from, this outside thing that they're just of to the only like only organization in the galaxy with to be in charge,
Right.
and that it goes very quickly, even for the people of Batu, from a thing I never think I'm going to have to care about because it's so outside the realm of my life, to
Right.
now there are stormtroopers.
Right.
Um, and that's why Vi has a hard time selling.
Mm-hmm.
Where by the end of the book, a lot of the secondary characters I want to talk about too
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
are set up like they are Resistance members that are also like the bartender at the cantina and the
Mm-hmm.
tech shop.
Right.
Like they are connected in a way that did not be possible.
I'm really hoping that the fine actors and employees at Galaxy's Edge are like aware of this book, because now I want to go there and ask, how is Zaid the bartender doing?
I want to go and I want to see a chatter fan.
Right.
who's
Yeah,
gonna fix up my generator for me.
Right. Oh man, but no, the world there was great. If we want to go into the side characters, it was funny. I loved the relationship with Vi and Archex as they were finding them. Like Archex had the same energy to me. I was telling you about this while we were reading it. As like Obi-Wan from the Phantom Menace. It's like, why do I get the feeling we've picked up another pathetic life form?
Right.
Like I was waiting for like that kind of reference or something, because it was just like every time he woke up from a nap, it's like, now who have you found? Like, have they had their shots? Who's here? Like, it was great. And Vi's like, I just keep finding these people, and they'll just show up, and it was their dynamic. The ever optimist and the complete rain cloud, like just playing off of each other, was so good.
Well, it is funny though, because it's just the two of them and Pook for so long.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you got this farm boy hanging out.
Yep.
There's a nervous chatter fan running around. And then just a a drunk hobo, as he puts it.
Right.
His code name is like the handsomest space hobo or something like that.
It was so good. Oh boy.
I love when they were going down their like call sheet of all their code names right before the attack. Like Mother Hen and Farm Boy, and but yeah, every time you're right. There was a scene where I was expecting Archex to basically like, what are we doing? Like all these random people.
What is this? You don't even have anything for me to do. Like, why do we keep finding people? Which Archex has an amazing arc through this book for sure. But no, the side characters were great. And, they all brought their own thing. Where you had, Zaid was the classic smuggler turned hero because he had his stuff stolen, and Kirky was somebody of all of the ones in the group, was probably the one most aware of the evil of the First Order and had the most reason to fight, but because of that she had the most fear to fight. Where Farm Boy's name is like, it's not Duncan, but I want to call him Duncan. Dolan, thank you. I can never anyway, I mean, we can go back to the Lake Titicaca dragon from Jedi Lost if we want to go to like, I can never say anyone's name.
Wait, what was that?
Was that a Jedi Lost? What is that?
There's our obligatory Kevin Scott reference.
Kevin Scott reference. Weekly is Frick. if you don't know what the Archmesh says. Anyway, no offense to anyone listening. I cannot. It's not your stuff. I can't remember anybody's name. But he was the one who was like, I want to go out and do the thing. And he had the horror at the end of the book of, oh, I just got a bunch of my friends killed. Whoops. And he has to deal with that. And so everybody kind of had their own arc and their own purpose. Like they showed a different journey to how you come to a fight like this. And I thought, I'm sure it was intentional, but it was very interesting to see the fight in their different ways. And even Aga, who was interested in after A Crash of Fate, and even more interested in after this novel. But she's the crime lord government, and she doesn't give a frick, spelt the Star Wars way, how this works, and we see her thinking she can stand up to the First Order, and she kind of does when it's only Kath.
Right.
I kept remembering Kath's name because it makes me think of Kath Hounds from Knights of the Old Republic, which is either very, very intentional or very not intentional, but it's how I could actually remember his name.
Made me think of catheters, which is a very different type of thing.
I was thinking of Kath Hounds, but But just to see everyone's journey and how they kind of end up getting involved in the fight, I thought was really good.
And I think it goes to show too, because we've got books like Alphabet Squadron, but
Mhm.
don't really have that for the resistance.
Mhm.
It goes to show that people come to the resistance,
Yeah.
and like, motivations are different. Nominally, it's everyone wants to fight the First Order, but
Mhm.
for Archex, he's fighting the First Order to redeem himself from his past sin.
Yep.
She's trying to stop catastrophe,
Mhm.
and for different characters, it means different things. I like that that's okay, that you don't all have to have the same motivation. It doesn't have
Mhm.
to be, some part here because I'm going to do
Mhm.
it for my reason. I like that that's enough. Like, I like at the end of the book, um, Vi says that she's got like a dozen part-time recruits.
Right.
Like they're not full-time, like soldiers of the resistance. That's how the resistance.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting too for you to bring up. We haven't had a book like this for the Resistance yet. Is the journey of how we get here. You start with the prequel trilogy, and you have the Republic, um, Prime, for
Yeah.
versus the Separatists. Um, the Rebel Alliance in new canon, and this is one thing I really, really adore about new canon. And when all of this stuff kind of started coming out around Rogue One, um, that it really helped me get into the new canon is that the Rebel Alliance, in a lot of ways, was born out of the remains of the Separatists.
Right.
Not entirely. They're obviously Leia and Alderaan and all of them are from the Republic, but this idea of, because the Republic became the Empire, the rebellion was largely the Separatists, and the Separatists weren't evil. The Separatist Council, the Separatists, like the Wat Tambor and Newt Gonray and all of them, they were evil.
Right.
But Separatists weren't evil. And Cassian was a Separatist, and to see that go, and then you have basically the Separatists become the rebels, become the new Republic, and then go back to becoming the Resistance, and the First Order is kind of like also a rebellion group. It's interesting to see the web of who becomes what,
Right.
and to see that in a way where, yes, the First Order is kind of a continuation of the Empire, and yes, the Resistance is kind of a continuation of the Rebellion, even though they're also kind of their own brand new things because of time. Especially when we get up to the sequel trilogy, because and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to that, and I think again, we see the difference between some characters have memories of the Empire and some don't.
Hmm.
Some are like, yeah, I remember when it was Imperial stormtroopers shot my dad in the back,
Yeah.
or I remember when it was Imperial stormtroopers burning our village to the ground,
Hmm.
and for some people that is such a recent memory that informs the life they're living now. And for some people, it's a complete myth. It's like,
Yeah.
when Leia's there on the the hologram in front of the new Resistance recruit, somebody says like, "Oh, you're real."
Yeah.
And it's one of those
You're
moments
a
with like
person.
Rey
Yeah.
and Finn in
With
the Force Awakens. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's real. Like, these are real people. They've been
Yeah.
doing real things, and whether because of the distance, Batuu is far away, or the time
Hmm.
that has passed, all of these things sort of fade pretty quickly into history, and almost to the point of myth. And
Yeah.
some people have that real, like, memory, I was there, and some people don't. And
Hmm.
I think, again, it places it in time, but it
Hmm.
also sort of tells us again who the characters are and what their motivations are, and what their values are. And I like that, and I like that we get to see that happen in real time.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, in the original trilogy, the rebels are rebels by the time we meet them,
Hmm.
and we kind of we learn that they have different reasons that they're rebels, but we don't really get to see a whole group of people come to accept a calling to a cause, over the course of a book, and that's what we get in this. Because apart from
Yeah.
from Vi, even Archex is learning what it means to be with the Resistance. So like every character apart from Vi comes to it in the course of this book, and it means different things to him. That a lot.
Well, and I like to go with more side characters. We have Savi, um, who's there as a scavenger, but obviously what he's really looking for is force artifacts
Right.
that Vi finds quite a few of. And we know, if you know about the Galaxy's Edge park, Savi's workshop is where you get to go and have like the experience to build your own custom lightsaber.
Right.
But what I liked about his character is he's kind of doing the hard thing. He's doing the thing that all the people who criticize prequel era Jedi would not be happy with, which is he's staying out of the fight because to him, what he has to do is preserve Force knowledge. Yep. Right? Like we don't really get told that in the book, but if he's the guy that guides you to building lightsabers, he has whatever it is, he has knowledge of the Force and how it works. And maybe that gets explained in the Galaxy's Edge comic, because I haven't read it either yet. I will. But he has to stay out of it, because if he dies, then all of this knowledge goes with him. Right. But he still helps. He still helps these people that he knows are trying to do the right thing, and is giving them resources. Very generous with his resources. But that was just kind of another interesting element. As you would expect him to be the guy who's like, no, I have to. If you compare what he's doing, which is helping and supplementing, to Vi, who gets herself into trouble because she doesn't want to let Zayd get shot, or the old women get beat up in the street. And those are kind of like those impossible choices, right? Where it's like, okay, if I intervene, then I risk all of these other lives, and if I don't intervene, then I just walked away and let somebody get murdered. And those are really, really tough calls. But Vi is making the choice to never walk away, and Savi is making the choice of, I'm going to help people, but I have to preserve and keep safe this thing that I'm keeping safe. And I don't think that's ever a dichotomy that's, at least I don't think it's like evident in the book, but maybe it is. Maybe I'm not as smart as I think I am. But that is a kind of comparison between those two characters that I found interesting and important, because I think you kind of need heroes that can do both. You need the people who can preserve and protect, in the same way that you need heroes that can go and push and lead.
Right, and all of that happens, again too, in the context of Black Spire Outpost, particularly with Oga too, because like Savi can't step too far because like she has drawn the line in the sand for him. Like this is as much as I'm going to allow you to do before it starts to be a problem. But even in terms of like the heroism of it, like she cares about Black Spire Outpost because she sees it as hers, which is a problematic thing, and she's definitely a gangster enforcing her own laws, but she's enforcing her own laws in not a way that's entirely dissimilar from Maz. Maz says, this is my place and these are my rules, and I'm going to make decisions for it because I'm going to protect it. Like it's not entirely dissimilar to that. And, I think, Maz obviously is more sympathetic to the Resistance than Oga is, but there's something to that too. And so like, I think I like that it's also particular to the environment of Batuu and to Black Spire Outpost. But I think there's a lot to that idea that Savi sees himself as, he even talks about being friends with Lor Santeca, about, being this protector of something bigger than that, and having, what was their word? The gleam, like when they could just tell that somebody was worthwhile, almost like it was a force instinct, where I can just discern that you are somebody that's going to be helpful to me, or at least somebody that's going to be like good in like a big moral way of thinking about it.
to go back to KOTOR again, it makes me think there's a Jolie Bindo story where he's describing Andor Vex, who had like this swirl of destiny or whatever. I don't think he called it the gleam, but he's like, sometimes swirling force is swirling force. He gets us old guys excited, so we go, ooh, destiny. It's one of my all-time favorite Star Wars lines. I love Jolie Bindo, but that's what I thought of every time. I'm like, ooh, it's swirling force.
See, I was thinking about when you could go and look at your character in the like pause screens. And like the more Sith you are, like your skin gets all cracked and mottled, and like there's swirling darkness around you. And then
if you're really light, you're like,
yep, look how noble I am, and the effects make you know that I'm super.
You can see my goodness.
And then if you were a gray Jedi, you don't exist because that's not a thing.
That's not. They're not a thing. They're not real. Tail has a good point here too, right? I love how they kind of find her, or she finds them. She doesn't feel successful in recruiting, but she gets help as well as when it's needed. Yeah, and a lot of this is Vi struggling. So she's a spy, and she's, we're told she's one of the top spies in the Resistance, but then she gets sent to recruiting and logistics and all of this other stuff, which is different than being a spy. And so the first half of the book is really just kind of her struggling until she finally finds the people who will help her. And then she kind of finds her place as the leader of the people who will help her. And so it was a good arc for her in becoming the mother hen and seeing how, this is how Leia does it. She gets to be or feel a little bit like Leia. And
right.
It's a good lesson too, to go, maybe life's easier if you have friends.
Yeah. Well, and apart from Dolan, nobody that comes to help her is swayed by a speech that she's giving about fighting good versus evil.
It was just the nice little farm boy with his pig that really liked.
and like the implication, I mean, to me, I think you can almost see an implication that he accepts it because he is this, doe-eyed farm boy,
right.
Luke Skywalker type, where other people need different things out of it. Like it's not like they're unsympathetic, but Yelena wants to help because she believes in the Force, and Zane wants to help because his stuff got stolen, and he,
right,
like, and they're looking for different things, and I like, that's exactly right. They find her as much as she finds them. I mean, for most of the book, like, she is bad at recruiting. Like her first night in the cantina gives a big speech that gets overheard by everyone there. And
yep. She feels like she's that person that does like the really long all caps Twitter threads, and like that's how she talks about politics.
Yeah.
Like she would be all over political Twitter.
Yeah.
To me, Vi Moradi. Where Zane's way more like, hey, I'm gonna buy you a beer, by the way. Which tends to make more friends.
I mean, and it's just I don't know, I really like it because one, I think she learns that though it's not as if her principled stance was wrong, that was not sufficient for everyone. It might have been sufficient for her, but it wasn't sufficient for everyone. And it's not like people were necessarily disagreeing with her. I mean, some of them did, but like Dolan's grandma was like, I'm living here on my farm, I'm doing my thing.
Yep.
Like, and until you showed up at my door, I had no reason for that to end. And and like is completely unswayed by any of her principled stances. And again, I like that it shows that though the principle is right, people are more complicated than that. And people's motivations and their lives are more complicated than that. And that's what Vi finds that first night in the cantina too, is they tell her, look, it's not like we're against you here. Savi only hires people that, are the kind of people who are likely to be supportive, apparently, that have that gleam. But at the same time, they weren't like all gung-ho, let's be soldiers today. They're like, no, I've got a job, I've got a place I live, I've got people I care about, and your principles are not necessarily sufficient to tell me to give that up.
And it gets difficult, and sometimes it's not just fear or selfishness. It's just, it's easy when you read a book like this, and we know Vi, and we've read Phasma, or even if you haven't read Phasma, you know this is Star Wars, and she's on the book cover, and you go, yeah, she's the person, and we know everything she's saying is true. My voice just peaked, so it's great. But with sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second, thinking about my voice peak. But for the people there, we don't know. Maybe she's the 10th person that month to come in with like, oh, it's not the First Order. Last time it was like the Purgil are coming. You don't know. Watch out for those space whales. They're it comes a point like of when are you going to start believing somebody's cause just because they showed up and they said some stuff, and that doesn't necessarily make you selfish. It can be foolish to change your whole life because one person came and told you some things, but it can be foolish to keep your head in the sand too, and it's, as you said, it's complicated, and the people at Batuu have to decide for themselves. And yeah, they don't decide to get involved until they see the First Order. But when you're out in the back of the galaxy, I mean, we see Batuu in the Clone Wars and Thrawn Alliances, but even then, it was like a mysterious factory, right? It wasn't grand center in the middle of a battlefield. So we have this. And if it was involved in the fight between the rebellion and the Empire, there would have been a base for Vi to go to. So this is a planet that has not been involved in a grand way in any kind of massive galactic scale. So why would they think that after 2 wars where they were barely involved, why would they get involved in the third one? Is it really that foolish for them to think that? And it was a case of Vi just showing up and going, not understanding the culture yet, and having to learn that, and that was part of her journey as well.
Well, and on a different level, it has changed, at least in part, the way I think about like NJO that we're still working our way through. Mm-hmm. Like, why don't people immediately latch on to the Vong as a threat? And this kind of like I mean, some of that is political corruption in the NJO, but like some of this is also like people just like. And it's bad, you want to believe that in a perfect world, people will hear about evil and immediately take principled stances. But I like that we are getting complex characters that have complex motivations and aren't always just jumping at the chance to, sign up to do what's exactly right.
No, and that makes sense. And it's what John's saying there. Like Vi's first speech was good for people who are already sympathetic, but it wasn't the right type of speech to sway people. And she's been involved in the conflict for so long and has had such a personal response to it. It can be hard when you have been in the storm to go to a desert and try to tell people what rain is. You can kind of forget that perspective, and seeing her on that journey was really good.
Well, and it's the difference between a character like Cassian, who says, I've been fighting my whole life, and a character like Owen Lars, who says, I need you to man the farm because we've got to get the harvest in. Like those are 2 completely different lives, and it makes sense that in a big galaxy, people would have different lives. And that things would affect them differently, and I like that we get that explicitly. In Batuu and in types of books.
Now I feel like there's a lot with Archex to talk about, and we've only kind of talked around Archex.
But before we do, I want to say that Pook was one of my favorite things in this book.
Yeah,
and I really wish that in an alternate universe, Pook and K2 could have like a stand-up routine that they do together every night at a cantina somewhere. How awful human. That's
he was great. He had that great sarcasm of just like so many.
I wanted to get that in before we moved on, but that's all I have there. Pook was great.
Pook was great. But with Archex, you brought up his redemption arc, and I had 2 thoughts. One was, well, I was pretty sure he wasn't going to make it through the book, just because he is not at Galaxy's Edge, and I did
Yeah.
not see him ending this book going back to hang out in the woods, and not being involved. So, but when the way he died was sacrificial, it's a very common thing to redeem a character through death. And so I was just kind of like, oh, it, it's not bad. It's a thing I've seen. But then thinking back on it, I think how he died was a thing that Archex needed more for Archex than he needed for his actual redemption.
Well,
I
I
feel
think so
like,
too.
Vi has that line of, well, he did this and he did this and he did this and all of these ways he was so important and he couldn't see how he was important. I mean, you can make an argument that he had started his path at the end of Phasma when he saved Vi and when he confronted Phasma.
Well, and there is
People
that
always,
moment when the rest of the crew learns that he was a stormtrooper.
yeah,
When Vi says that explicitly, like he has already
yeah,
accounted for everything. He has,
yeah,
like he left, he turned his back on that, and just by
hmm
being here, he has already done enough. Like there is no
yeah,
more that is required of him in order for me to trust him. Tortured me.
yeah. You guys are worried. Like, I mean, that chilling moment when Kirky points out that like she still screams his name at night, or
Yeah.
Cardinal, his old name at night, and it's. I think it's interesting to think about this. Really, is more of a, we so often see the stories where somebody turns. You have like your callous characters from Rebels who turn, and then he knows he's actively doing something. Exactly, John. That Archex had not forgiven himself. That Callus, was on that journey and knew that he was helping. Or you have the characters like Vader who get redeemed in their final act. But it was really intriguing to see this character where I was reading the book like, wow, I'm really going to be into this guy's redemption arc. And then at the end of the book, I realized no, it wasn't his redemption arc. It was his arc where he learned that he was redeemed.
Right.
And it didn't necessarily click for me until kind of Vi's final thoughts on it. But I really appreciate that because that's something we don't see as often in Star Wars.
I mean, I think so too, and he really does struggle with it, and it makes sense why.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when like he's confronting those stormtroopers, and he's like, I know who you are because I trained. Like,
Yeah.
Like I know exactly who you are because like I'm the one that taught you how to be a stormtrooper. Like
Mm-hmm.
like that matters, and like that's important. And like as she's screaming out his name in nightmares every night, like he
Mm-hmm.
hears that. Like that
Yeah.
doesn't go commented on in the book, but like if the rest of them are hearing that, so is he.
Yeah.
And like is that he hasn't forgiven himself. And it's, I think that's what makes his death more meaningful, is not that he got to the point where he realized he didn't need to sacrifice himself to redeem himself,
Mm-hmm.
but that he sacrificed himself because he was a different person and
Yeah.
wanted different things,
Yeah.
and was giving himself for a cause, not just to atone for his past.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, it was well, John says he'd love to see a conversation between Archex and Finn, and that we still have time for that because there's a time span where between the Phasma novel and this book where that could, especially after Last Jedi, it could have conceivably happened. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting thing because I think too, Archex so values hard work, and he's always pushing through the pain. He's wanting to be useful. He's always wanting to do something, and he's trying to describe why he stayed with the First Order. And he talks about how easy it is. It's easier when you can put the uniform on and you know who you are and you know what your purpose is, and there's a comfort. And I think there's a part of him that hates himself for evil things he's done, people he's tortured and people he'd have killed. But I think he also kind of hates himself because he knows he was doing the easy thing. And he not only was he doing it, but he didn't know he was doing the easy thing.
I mean, because he even corrects himself at one point, when he says, you know, I didn't have a choice because when the First Order rescued me from Jakku, and then he's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, they abducted me from
They
Jakku.
abducted it. Yep.
Like, and he's using this that's in that speech where he's trying to convince the rest of them that they can trust him,
Yeah.
and he's saying, I spent my entire time on one Star Destroyer, and like I never left that until, for a decade, I never left that until Vi stole me away.
Yep.
And like that's a hard thing to come around with too, that and it's a difficult thing, and Star Wars has explored this in a lot of different places at different times, but
Mm-hmm.
like some people, like for him, he preferred the Order. Like it says, like Kath says at one point, he would prefer the bland rations every day. Like,
Yeah.
and like that's especially when that's like a programming and a chemical thing that has been given to you since your
Right.
childhood. Like it's hard for him to break out of that,
Mm-hmm.
and and that type of freedom that he gets from not having, a set. This is what I have to do all day, every day. It's terrifying for him at first, and
Mm-hmm.
it's hard for him to come to terms with,
Yeah.
because I mean that's what the First Order, like it trains their troopers to say, order is what valued, freedom is bad, and
Right.
for him to come full circle to make a free choice to stand up to the First Order at the end, like it says something about how far he's come.
Right. And I like I said, I thought that was really strong. And the way you were talking there to kind of like loop Archex back to Vi, and they are so connected. Is Vi is the one that broke him out, and that's really what she was. I mean, she's top spy, but like she survived the Phasma novel because she could make that really good personal one-on-one connection. And at the beginning of the novel, we see her trying to recruit the whole town in a day. Almost not really, but like she was trying to do these, get the whole crew on her side. But really, it was one-on-ones with Yelena and one-on-ones with Savi and then one-on-ones with her other crew members. And that's really where her strength is. She is really good at those interpersonal exchanges. And that's really what helped give Archex a chance to kind of pull himself back from the brink. And he did that largely himself. He didn't have to save Vi. And so much of what he does to make himself useful in Black Spire is his own choices. So I'm not saying like Vi saved him for him, but she put the crack in the door because that's what she's good at. And it took her realizing, oh, I'm good at finding the individuals, and then the individuals are good at the big picture. I don't have to do the big picture.
I mean, and even with the interpersonal stuff like you're talking about, like we see how far Archex comes from
Mm-hmm.
from completely not understanding how any interpersonal relationship works, because
Mm-hmm.
as soon as he realizes they aren't enemies anymore, he thinks, oh well, I guess that means we have to kiss now, because
Right.
that's what people that don't
That
hate
poor
each other
guy.
do. And Vi's
Yeah,
like, no, we can just be friends. Like,
that's a thing that can
and he
happen.
doesn't seem like rejected because of that. He's like, oh, okay. Like I
Like, oh, I was
I didn't
confused.
understand that like that you could have like like friends in the world. Like even at the end of the novel, like this is narration from Dawson, not something.
Mhm,
I don't think it was like an in character thought necessarily,
mhm.
um, but it says, he wasn't friends with Kath when they were troopers together. Like
Right.
at best, they just happened to be in the same unit. Like to
Mhm,
go from I don't understand what friendship is to I'm going to sacrifice myself on behalf of these other people.
mhm.
Like there's a great expanse there between those two things. Shows
Right.
how far he's come.
Mhm. And I there was a lot to appreciate in that particular scene. And part of that being, it makes sense. You have this guy who has been programmed, has not had all of these true closeness, interpersonal communicate or interpersonal relationships. And it's really natural for a guy who's straight to be around a chick, and to have these, I mean, they certainly weren't romantic, but to have these intimate moments between them that then makes them vulnerable around them, around each other, to not know what to do with that. People
Right.
who have been in relationships and have had friendships wouldn't know what to do with it. And it was very normal for him to kind of go there, not necessarily because it's a true deep-seated feeling, but because it's like, well, this is what people in the holovids do.
Right.
And then it you know, it didn't go that way because Vi's ace, but you know, I thought that was really done. And she, you know, she turns him down in a nice way. And I think it also helps them kind of get close. I think like once you survive a really awkward moment with a friend, like it's like, okay, we can make it now because we got through this weird thing. And that seemed to be the point where I was really happy that it was that they you know, they did get closer after that moment instead of like he had to go and sit in the woods by himself because he was so. Yeah. Hello, Rebecca. And yes, I agree. I thought that was a really good
well,
point.
and I think not to be too specific, but I think there's cultural value in 2019 of seeing that
Yes.
that what comes of something like that doesn't have to take a or note. But I
Sour
also
note.
at the same time, just to contrast the two Galaxy's Edge novels, like the same types of interactions, which are motivation for a love story in one novel, are not another novel.
Yeah.
And I like seeing that dichotomy too, or like with you know like Dolan and Yelena fall in love across this novel, and I like seeing that again what they mean to each other is different too, and it can change and evolve, and it just makes it feel so much more real than I think. And again, I love Legends, but I feel like Legends focuses so much on the main characters that we don't get a lot of side character interactions. But I like that all of the characters in these novels are people. And they respond like people. Makes it feel, like Sim says, it feels very, very human. Not to be speciesist and acknowledge that there are non-humans here, but it feels very, very, very human.
Yeah, like I said, those were the moments. I mean, like I tweeted at Dawson, the when Kirky is so afraid and worried she can't do it, and Vi just saying, you know, there's no such thing as enough. Like that's a big thing to kind of make you realize, like, oh, okay, like I just have to be me, right? You know, and that's struggle enough on its own.
I tweeted at Delilah Dawson asking if some pig was a Charlotte's Web reference.
I mean, I caught that reference. I did. Most of my time on Twitter lately, because if you don't follow Delilah Dawson on Twitter, you are missing out because she does these amazing like threads, and a lot of them are really great writing advice. So if you're interested in being an author, she's a great follow. But even as somebody who's not necessarily interested in being a professional author, I find the thread so interesting because she talks a lot about the kind of struggles that come up in this book of just like imposter syndrome and being afraid that you're not enough and how to deal with getting over anxiety or depression and all of these things. And I try really hard not to interact with her more than like once every couple of days so she doesn't think I'm a crazy internet stalker, but like the number of times my entire day has been made better because I read some of her tweets is I can't keep track of anymore. But that's
on
my
Instagram a lot too. I know you are on Instagram less, but
I'm on Instagram less, yes. And her instas tend to go to Twitter, which is part of the reason why I never end up on Insta. But
I know we're running close on time, but I have two quick questions for you before we
Okay.
One, so we've seen Vi Moradi in 2 different novels now, and I know that she's in Batuu. What are the chances that we see outside of the Disney park experience Vi Moradi again in the
I think high. I think very, very high. Especially because the implication in this book is that she was on Crate.
I think so too. I mean, she says she was on Crate.
On Crate, yeah. So, I mean, there's always a chance for a retelling of the Battle of Crate that would show us where she was. But I think even after, I mean, presumably Galaxy's Edge is one day over and over and over again, like Groundhog's Day. So presumably she survives the day on, you know, presumably she survives Groundhog Day. And, you know, I think there is more character development to be had with her. There were a couple of beats from her character-wise I was kind of hoping to get that I didn't see, but I think that's because her character has to be who her character is at Galaxy's Edge. I don't think that is the fault necessarily of, I'm not saying that's not Dawson's fault, that's not the book's fault. It's the nature of when this book takes place. And Vi is a young lady with plenty of time to kind of hit the next couple of beats, especially if it means we get another novel with the character out of Dawson.
Right.
So I'm super excited for that. Hello, Yagi, welcome. Now,
and my other question is, at least I've just finished it before we started, so I could have missed something, the possibility. But there's not a super explicit thing that says this is the person who ratted Vi out in the first. And so by the end of the novel, we kind of see, she says, I can walk around without my mask, I can walk around with my Starbird. People are kind of cool with me now. Like, do we need to know? Like, we are never told who rats her out, and so it could still be that person is there.
It could be Sharky. What's his name? Aga's former
Briscoe
dude.
or whatever
Briscoe
that died on the Imperial or the First Order.
Yeah, I don't think it explicitly says it, but it could be because he would know, and he didn't like her, and he's dead, so it would fit. If I had to guess, I would say him. I don't really believe that Oga, however you'd say it. I don't think she's specific. I don't think she rats Vi out. I think that as much as she's terrible, she's got a certain honor among her, but I could be wrong. I haven't met a lot of gangsters, so I don't really know.
I won't say whether or not I have, or whether or not I am one.
I've never seen you and a gangster in the same room, so
Anyway.
That I know. That didn't even make sense. Anyway.
But I think that's what I've got for Black Spire today.
Anyway, I still plan on doing a spoiler-free review of the book here soon, now that I'm not under the weather. But I enjoyed it. Tonally, it's different than Phasma. Phasma is like Mad Max and has Phasma in it. So it's a completely different tone, completely different type of thing. But this was still good. It still has a lot of really brutal scenes that are like, oh, I'm reading about a happy farm boy and his pig. Oh, you're sticking a needle in this woman's eye. That's fun. Like, it was like, oh, right, I forgot. This is right stuff. Okay. But so there, it still has its brutal moments, but it's tonally different than the previous book. If that's important to you, I don't say that as a negative, but be aware so that you don't spend time, waiting for Phasma to show up or something like that.
Right.
But
maybe she did and we didn't know.
I mean, we've never seen Phasma and Aga in the same room. I'm just saying.
That's true. Maybe she turned into a Plutonian. Last Jedi.
Phasma can do anything Phasma wants. Okay, she could be.
I believe it.
If she could be Gwendolyn Christie and look at me and say I'm a Plutonian, I'd go, yes, you are, ma'am.
You'd be like twice as tall as you are anyway, but
yes, you are. Yeah. Actually, I don't think I could speak. It would be more like ma.
But so we're still looking. There's a lot of books coming out soon between now and December. So there's still other books for us to talk about. We still not forgotten about our NJO read through. We are probably going to go ahead. So the last 2 years we have done Star Wars horror novels in October. And we have some plans along those lines. But if you have things you'd like for us to talk about on a StreamCast, you can always leave them in the stream chat or in the comments, or let us know on Twitter.
Or our Discord.
Yeah, Discord too. So you can find our Discord link in the description, which is there-ish, I guess, down.
Yagi dropped it for us.
Oh, yeah, there you go. But follow us on all of the socials. We are on all the places. As far as I know, we still have a Tumblr out there.
Somewhere, which
Yep.
neither of us use, but you can use it.
And probably hasn't been updated in 4 or 5 years. So if
It's
you
beast.
want to run our Tumblr, let us know.
Yeah.
But I think that's gonna do it for us today. We will be around again.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll be around someday next week. Again, our schedules are kind of up in the air a little bit week to week right now. But if you follow us on Twitter and on Discord especially, you will know when we will be live.
Yep.
But I think that's going to do it for us today.
Thank you so much, guys. Oh, and may the spires keep you.
Right, may the spires keep you.